It is Inside the Arc. Welcome in, everyone. It is Alec Bussey, joined as always by Brandon Simberg. The Illini go into Sim's home, essentially his second home, and pound the Indiana Hoosiers 40-21 in the second half. Sim, are you emotionally recovered yet from the beating that your childhood team just took yesterday in their home gym, I might add?
Yeah, I think I'm recovered because I didn't expect them to win the game.
You did not. You're correct.
I
You
did not.
texted me. You texted me multiple times and said that Illinois would win that game.
This
You're
is
a very pessimistic Indiana fan.
I am, but I mean, obviously, the last 4 years have scarred me. It's just not a game that they win. Sans the Purdue thing. Indiana doesn't match up well. I was financially hedging myself by betting some money on Illinois
On a legal sports book, I hope.
Yes. And so I was fine. And look, now Illinois controls their own destiny in the Big Ten. They are in sole possession of first place, and that's really exciting. So yeah, I am emotionally recovered because I didn't put too much emotional investment in said game. But that was your first time in Bloomington at Assembly Hall. So, what'd you think?
It was really cool. Just an awesome stadium. It's really big. I was told before by someone that it kind of has like a high school feel to it, which I was like, I don't really know how that can be true because it's, it sits over 16,000. It's really big. But you get in there and you kind of see why people would say that. I think I give a lot of credit to Indiana fans. Like, they're just really intelligent fans. They understand the game. They understand like that small things can mean big things, like stopping a dribble drive or forcing the offense to reset. Like, that was really cool. I saw a lot of people saying the environment was really, really good. And maybe yesterday I just didn't think it was as good. And I went back and watched the film this morning for my 5 film favorites story. And I realized it did get a little bit loud in the first half at points, especially when Indiana hit a big bucket or they were up. But the fouls kind of took the energy out of it in the first half. And then Illinois goes up in the second half, and then Indiana's down. So there's not much energy there. But it was a really, really cool stadium, really cool environment. I can see why people say that needs to be a place that you need to go. I now really want to compare it, and this is something you and I were talking about afterwards before I started my drive back. I want to compare it to a Cameron Indoor, a Fog Allen, the Rupp Arena, the Dean Dome, like obviously go out to UCLA and see Westwood. Like, I want to compare it to those other historic arenas and just see how it stacks up and compares. And maybe I should go back to Indiana as a fan sometime. I feel like that makes it better because I feel like when you're working, you just don't get that like full experience. But I do want to compare it to all those other places.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is like kind of been like a take I've been sitting on the past, I guess, over a year now.
Oh, this will be good.
Since fans came back. Well, I think the environment and like the what you feel, what your perception is of like how loud it is largely based on like where you sit in the crowd. Because I like a lot of national reporters here have come to Champaign, come to State Farm Center, and they've raved about like how loud Illinois Stadium is and like how exciting this is. But if you're Jeff Goodman and you're coming to Champaign, you're right at the scores table, right behind the Orange Crush. So I feel like the noise is like on you. And I used to think that when I would go and sit at that same table. But now like I kind of sit on the other side, it's like it's clearly just loud from like one direction. And so I think when you went to Indiana, like you're pretty high up there as media.
Yeah, but can I say something? I really liked where media sits at Indiana. Like, you have a really good perspective of the game. I understand you're high and you're not as close, so you don't get like the intimate feel of like sitting courtside and hearing like some of the things that coaches and players say. But I really liked sitting where I was. Like, I feel like I saw the game a lot better there.
Yeah, I think it's a really good media seat. But I don't think it's like the crowd isn't on top of you, so it's not as loud like as you think. And
well, there's no one behind you.
Yeah, so I think that like that plays a role to the atmosphere. Where that's why I think it's good to go to games as fans and check out the atmosphere because you're in the thick of it. So yeah. That's just kind of my take on it, because like all the national reporters like say how loud State Farm Center is. And it does get loud at times, and like the student section is obviously awesome. But if you're a national reporter, the student section is on you, so it's gonna sound louder.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I will also give Indiana credit. They pack a bunch of students into that arena. I mean, I was walking in I got to the game like an hour before tip-off, and Indiana. First of all, yes, I like how they mailed the credentials. I like this. Because I was lost outside of that arena. They said, go to the Northwest Tower. I'm like, all right. See a sign that says North Entrance. See a sign that says West Entrance. I'm like, going to go meet it in the middle. Can't find it. I'm thinking like, this has got to be an entrance. I text you, my resident Indiana expert. Where the hell's North Tower?
I don't know
where the hell's Northwest Tower. You're like, I don't know. Figure it out. I'm like, aren't you an Indiana fan? Are you supposed to be helpful?
I don't study the map of Assembly Hall before.
Okay, so hear me. So this is, and we need to get on with breaking down the game and eventually previewing the Purdue game. So we should do this quickly. So I go through the north entrance, and there's no like media entrance, which is weird in the first place. I'm like walking around, I see a lady. I'm like, hey, can media enter here? She's like, yeah. I'm like, awesome, cool. You just need to scan your backpack. I'm like, cool. To do that, I'm like, where does media go? She's like, well, I don't know. I'm like, okay, thank you, I guess. So I see a sign that says west. So I'm thinking like, I'll go west because it said northwest. That was completely wrong side of the stadium. And like, I'm asking other like stadium ushers, I'm like, hey, do you know where media sits? They're like, yeah, I think down on the floor. I'm like, it's not there. I know it's not there because I've heard stories. I literally get into an elevator, go all the way up to the top on, I guess what was the west side of the stadium, which is wrong. I walk out and I see across the stadium, like these like 4 rows of seats just cut in there. I'm like, oh, that's totally where the media sits. So I walk all the way around the stadium. I take a picture of the old center court, send a Snapchat of it to you and say, hey, this is the court that Indiana played on when they were relevant, which I don't think liked very much, but continue the story. I then find my seat and I'm like, oh, this is cool. I'm right at half court. Like, this is awesome. I like this. I was a big fan.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, aside from the semantics, there was actual basketball played. And are
you just ignoring the court comment there?
I've been ignoring your anti-Indiana comments for a year now. So yes.
It's really fun to mess with Indiana fans. I just really enjoy it. By the way, is that a trophy on your desk over your shoulder? What is that?
Where?
The thing like by the wall, it's like brown and kind of gold.
My fan?
Is that a fan?
That's my fan, I think.
Oh, maybe it's a fan. It kind of looked like a trophy. I don't know if you stole Brownie's trophy from the win over the Northwest.
That's my fan. But anyway, we had a basketball game on Saturday. It was a pretty good basketball game. I thought it was like a relatively high level basketball game, aside from a minor ref show at the beginning. Indiana actually took a 2-point lead into halftime, and then Illinois came out and just dominated the second half. They pulled away in the second half. They won 74-57. Trent Frazier led Illinois with 23 points and kind of had one of his signature heaters, I thought, in the second half. He just gets on a run, has a crossover, 12-3, like just, it plays off the crowd. I thought Kofi Coburn was just solid.
He was much better in the second half. He was objectively bad in the first half.
Yeah.
If you look around, you'll see the world can be pretty smart.
Hey, press that mute button real quick.
Yeah.
Right,
it was the ESPN ad. Like, you ever checking the ESPN box score and the ad runs?
Yeah, I have this thing called an ad blocker. It works great. You should download one.
I don't have that.
You should get one.
All right, that's paused. I'll pick up where I left off.
No, we can just keep going. It's fine.
You had Kofi Coburn. I feel like in the second half, he definitely picked it up, but just a solid 17, 8 points, 8 rebounds. Great defensively on Trace Jackson Davis. In the Big Ten Sun rankings, he is now Trace Jackson Davis' father.
This will be good. This will be good.
I think he is the father of Trace Jackson Davis. I'm okay to say.
Where does Hunter Dickinson factor into this? And Travion Williams, please.
Ooh.
And Zach Edey. Can we get the whole lineage?
I don't think so I think Edey is Kofi's father. I mean, we'll see.
I think so.
But I think
we need. There's one son each. So we need a father. So we need a son, a father, a grandfather. So we got 3 players, a great grandfather, and a great great grandfather. So we need 5. Okay. So the son has to be TJD.
Well, so hold on. You're not gonna like this. You know who TJD killed this year?
Hunter?
EJ Liddell. He killed EJ
Liddell. Well, he doesn't count because EJ's a 4.
And so I think Trace is a 4 too. They still.
Well, I think Trace plays 5 for Indiana because they have Bryce Thompson.
Look,
so
I'm just saying, Trace fathered EJ. Kofi.
Okay, so we need a great 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 grandfather, and okay. So EJ is the son
of Trace.
Yeah. So Trace is a dad. So then we're saying, so I think Travion has to be Trace's father.
But I think Kofi's Trace's father.
Yeah, but Kofi owns Travion.
But I also think, you know who owns both of them? Zach Edey because he's been better than
Yeah,
both.
exactly. So Edey is the great grandfather. So we got three greats. So Edey is at the top of the food chain. So
I think Kofi and Trevian are like brothers because Edey kind of owns the boat.
So he's got an uncle in the mix now.
But Kofi is the older brother of Trevian and like kind of owns him. But Edey kind of owns Edey.
So we've got a whole tree going on here now.
And watching Purdue and Michigan Saturday, Hunter Dickinson killed Zach Edey. That being said, I'm not saying I'd rather have Hunter Dickinson and all these guys, but Hunter Dickinson is the first guy who
By the way, he is actually having a phenomenal season. Just no one knows about it because Michigan's god awful.
But I've never seen someone play Edey off the court or like make him as uncomfortable on defense as Hunter Dickinson made Zach Edey on Saturday hitting his threes. So I guess that's the tree. That being said, though, I still think in a weird way, Kofi, I think, is still Dickinson's father because he ducked him in Champaign.
Well, and he won the one-on-one matchup last year.
Yeah, but that is the tree.
We didn't assign all the roles, but it's okay. Let's get back to it.
But yeah, otherwise, just a strong performance from Illinois. We can debate whether we think Indiana's good or not, but they were 9-1 in Assembly Hall coming into this game. They're a tournament team. I think it's a quad one win. Like it's a good win. It is a good win. It is a win you need if you want to win the Big Ten. And now Illinois is in sole possession of first place. What did you kind of take away from the game?
First half, Illinois' defense was terrible because they couldn't guard without fouling. But in the second half, it was much better. Illinois had 10 fouls at the 3:52 mark of the first half. Indiana also had 10. So it was a pretty evenly officiated game. But defensively in the second half, I thought Illinois played much better. Trent Frazier was a lot better on Xavier Johnson in the second half, which oddly was a really difficult matchup for Trent offensively. I think Xavier Johnson did a really good job defensively against Trent. And Trent even made sure to mention that after the game. And it's odd to hear Trent outwardly say that a player does a really good job defensively against him. I don't know if he says that a lot. And he made a comment about that after the game. So give credit to Xavier Johnson. He really took away Trent's dribble drive, which I give a lot of credit for because a lot of people haven't been able to do that on him this season. But he hits a couple of big shots in the second half, has 2 threes. One of them that I kind of consider like the first of a couple daggers. Put Illinois up, I think, 8 or 9 points. It was that crossover to the left wing in transition. Just a really nice play. He's done that so many times in his career. But that was a big one. He ends up with, like you said, 23 points, goes 3 of 6 from 3. And after struggling from 3 against Michigan State, Northwestern, and Wisconsin, I kind of banked on him to get hot and hit a couple against Indiana and Purdue. So thanks for making me look smart, Trent. I wrote that about you. I also think that, and I don't know if I texted you this. Did I text you that Kofi Coburn is like super consistent, but also really inconsistent at the same time yesterday during the game? Okay, so can I explain this for a second? I said this in the first half, and this is when he was struggling. He ended the first half with, I think, just 5 points and 2 rebounds. And I think he was like 2 of 7 from the field and 1 of 4 from the free throw line. He is incredibly consistent in the fact that he's good for close to 20 points and 10 rebounds a game, right? But then there's also times where he's just incredibly frustrating to watch because he struggles for weird reasons. Like, why is Kofi Coburn struggling against Michael Durr, of all people? Why is he struggling against Julian Reese? Like, he should be dominating those people in the paint, and he just hasn't at times this season. Now, I get why, Zach Edey and Christian Koloko, like those type of players are much better matchups for him. They're bigger, they're longer, but like a Michael Durr who's big and long, he's nowhere near as good as Christian Koloko. And like Julian Reese is a skinny freshman who probably weighs like 215, 220 pounds when soaking wet. Like Kofi should have dominated that. And he did for the last 10 minutes of the second half against Maryland. But if you remember correctly, Julian Reese dunked on him and then swatted him once or twice in the second half. So like, that's what I kind of mean. Like, he's really consistent, but he has these moments where he's just like, isn't very good, which like, maybe that's just basketball, but it's weird to say that about a player who is in the conversation for National Player of the Year, as we all expected.
Yeah, I think this goes back to my concerns with Kofi is that he's kind of one-dimensional and like guys with size can just bother him. And obviously like the bigger, better defensive ones like Edey and Koloko, it's to an extreme. Durr's probably in the middle, so it bothers him a little bit more. And then you have Steven Crowell, who like is the worst defender in that group, and he's food. Like I just, you know what I mean? I think Kofi's opponent is going to dictate how good.
Well, and this is why it's really important. And we're going to talk about this later with the matchup for Purdue when we kind of go into this brief preview that we're going to do with that game. But he needs to be more consistent at times this season. Like you can't go from 37-12 against Wisconsin. And the final stat line against Indiana still looks good though, right? Like 17 points, 8 rebounds, 6 of 13 from the field. You'd like it to be a little bit better. But he won the one-on-one matchup with Trace, especially in the second half.
Yeah, no, I thought he had it wasn't his best game, but it was a good enough game. And you couple that with a really good Trent Frazier game, good defense, and Alfonso Plummer wasn't great, but he had some shots. He got to the line.
The shots that he hit were huge though in the game.
Same with Jake Grannis hit 2 threes.
Yes.
I think they were back to back. They were both big shots. You got 2 threes from DeMonte, which we talked about before. We'd like to see him do a little
one,
more.
and he hit one against Wisconsin. Brad said after the game that they're trying to get him more shots. They want him to shoot it more. And it's really, I find it really funny. This was last Monday. I think I was running on the treadmill at the Arc, and I get a text from you, and I choose not to respond because I don't want to text and run on the treadmill. I'll fall off and go off the back of it. Probably a responsible decision. I may or may not have done that when I was a kid once. So, and that's a story for another time. But like you asked, is it time to cut DeMonte Williams in favor of, Luke Goody or RJ Melendez? And I texted you afterwards as I'm walking out, and I said, no, if you're going to cut anyone's minutes, it's Coleman's. And look whose minutes, quite frankly, have been cut for the freshmen in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And it's funny that we say this, and we're not the only ones saying it too. Like it was a big topic of conversation. And now DeMonte is knocking down shots like he did last year. It's funny. It's kind of ironic that he's doing this. And he's stroking it with confidence. Like that step back that he hit. Where the heck did that come from? I haven't seen that in 4 years.
That was so unlike it. It looked good. It looked good though.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me of like a James Harden step back. Like the massive step back. But without the travel, because Harden travels when he does it that far.
All right, we're not slandering James Harden today.
You're a big James Harden guy.
And we got a 3 from Luke Goody too. So I thought it was a pretty balanced team effort where a bunch of guys hit shots at good opportunities, and you didn't need 37 from Kofi to win, which is a positive sign because I think at some point in March you're going to have a game where he's sub 20 points and you're going to need other guys to step up.
And to me, Sim, that's where this Illinois team becomes really dangerous. And this is really big picture and looking far ahead. And maybe that's one of my big takeaways from Saturday in Bloomington is that Illinois is showing now that they can win games without Kofi playing really, really well against a team that's going to be in the tournament. So if Illinois gets, a 3 or 4 seed, maybe a 5 seed, they're probably pretty healthy on the 4 line right now, you'd say, right?
Yeah, Lenardi threw out something today where they were the 3rd 4.
Okay. I feel like they were kind of on the 5 line entering the week when they had Wisconsin and Indiana, and then winning both of those games probably moves you up to the 4. So let's just say they're on the 4.
Mm-hmm.
You're playing a 13 in the second round. That's not a team that you should theoretically struggle with, but in the round of 32, you would play a
5 or a 12.
You play a 5 or a 12, right? And if you play a 5, what do you think Indiana's going to be seed wise? I'm trying to do this.
An 8, they strike me as just a 7 to 10, 8, 9.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe a 10 seed, right? So and I think there's a world where it gets up to being a 3 seed and you have to play a 10 seed. And that's a team in Indiana or maybe North Carolina if they get into the tournament, or you're not going to play Notre Dame in the round of 32, but a team like that, right? You don't have confidence that you can win a game without Kofi playing a National Player of the Year candidate. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, cool. We're on the same page. Imagine that.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I thought it was mostly positives from Illinois yesterday, but I think one player who maybe wasn't great, and it was his worst game, but another performance where Andre Carvalho really didn't make his mark, and at times it just didn't feel like he was out there.
Yeah.
Are you since the Purdue game where he it was his first game back, total unexpected performance. He lit them up for 20 points in that double overtime loss. He was 1 for 6 against Maryland with 1 assist, 3 turnovers, 3 for 7 against Wisconsin, a little bit better with 2 assists, 2 turnovers.
He was good offensively, in my opinion, against Wisconsin.
Yeah, 7
he was
shots.
Bad defensively, but I thought he was good offensively. Now, it did concern me that he came in and shot on his first 4 possessions.
And then, yesterday's 1 for 4, no assist, 3 points, 1 for 3 from the line. I guess only 1 turnover, but 12 minutes is no assist. Like,
well, and his 1 turnover is when he got tripped.
okay.
So don't really even count it as a turnover in my opinion.
That's fair. But yeah, like I don't know. He's obviously working his way back from a concussion and from COVID still. Like, he's not 100%, but I'm losing faith we're going to see anything close to the guy we thought we were going to see.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about him yet because I just think it's going to be a long process. But I think there's this hope that, do you remember how good he was in the last stretch of the regular season and then the Big Ten tournament last year?
Yes.
I think that was kind of the hope that Illinois would have that all year from him as a sophomore, taking the sophomore jump, obviously assuming health. And now I hope you just get back to that. I think if you're Illinois, right? Like, you're just hoping you get back to that level of play in the back half of February and going into March. And if you get back to that, I think you feel good about yourself. But I think getting back to that on a consistent basis is going to be really difficult because, one, the conditioning is not there. They're running him really hard to get him there. But also, he's not going to get the game reps that I think he needs to get back to that level of play. And he's not going to get those game reps because Trent Frazier is damn good. Like, he played 36 minutes against Indiana. And maybe this is where Curbelo is really, really valuable, is the fact that you can give Trent an extended blow in the first half, which is something that we've seen Underwood now do in the last 2 games, is bring Curbelo in for a longer stretch and allow Trent to catch a breather. And then he's really fresh for the second half, where Curbelo hasn't played a lot. Now, I think you want Curbelo to end up giving you more than 12 minutes a game by the end of the year. And you definitely want him to be more impactful in those 12 minutes than he was against Wisconsin and then he was against Indiana. But I'm not really concerned yet because I think this is just a long process. And I don't sense that Brad Underwood is concerned yet. And I don't really sense that his teammates are concerned yet that he's not going to come back. And also, this is a really good team without him. And I guess that maybe poses me to the question that we talked about before. Is Illinois better without Andre Curbelo right now? On the court.
Yeah,
not on the team. That needs to be clarified. That's what I hate about this question in basketball. It's like, oh, is this team better without Andre Curbelo? Or is this team better without, I don't know, like if someone wanted to argue if is Duke better without Trevor Keels? Well, no, they're not, obviously. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like, people always fail to mention they're still on the team. They're still on the court.
Yeah, like, I think that's why I'm not overly concerned either. I think Curbelo now the teams have a year of scouting on him, of a film on him, and he's kind of the same player. Like, to me, he's kind of the same player he was last year, where like when he drives and comes off screens, like he's really looking to pass. He's a pass first player, and I think he did so well against Purdue because they're not great at defense.
They didn't scout him either,
and yeah, they didn't really expect him to play, but like Purdue kept going over his ball screens, trying to pressure him, and I think teams now, what I've seen, they're just going under and daring them to beat him on shots. And even when he drives, they're okay with him shooting a tough runner instead of helping it all because they know he's going to dish it off. Teams are just kind of going under his screens and making it hard. But again, I think
he becomes really valuable in transition.
So, and to your point, Trent's been awesome. You can't take him off the floor. So it kind of becomes Curbelo versus Plummer. And I just think Plummer, because of his elite shooting, even in a game where it's 3 for 10, he just draws so much gravity defensively that,
yes.
Yeah, right now, close game, I wouldn't put Curbelo on the floor unless it is like Purdue. I like how they're using him. They're throwing him.
I do too.
Seeing what he can do, and if he's finding his rhythm and he's changing the game and the outcome of it, then yeah, you keep playing him. But I'm fine with him playing 12 minutes if it's just not his night.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I like what you mentioned there about Alfonso Plummer, because he said that, and I don't have the quote in front of me, but he said it yesterday. He's like, teams are saying Alfonso's not catching, I think is what he said, or no catches for Alfonso, I think was his exact quote. And Brad Underwood has said that teams are running him off the line and he's okay with that and Plummer not getting as many threes and maybe field goal attempts in general as he was before, because, you look at it and he's creating so much space because he has so much gravity, like you said. Like, Curbelo brings a lot of gravity for teams scouting report wise, but it's a lot different. And you play with less space in the half court when Curbelo is the one in there instead of Plummer. And I think that's really, really interesting to see how they monitor this and handle it going forward, because even though Plummer's not shooting it as well, and going into the Purdue game or the Indiana game and his last 4 or 5, I think he was around like 33% from 3. And I think I wrote this. That's not where he's going to be. And obviously his looks are more difficult and they're not coming as in large of sums, but I still think he's going to end up shooting. I think he's going to end up going on a tear here in the second half, because he's going to end up getting open and he's going to find ways to bury shots because he's a shooter, and that's what shooters do.
Yeah, I agree. So do we want to move on to Purdue?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm excited to talk about this because I think in our like year and a half-ish or so of like being in the same basketball circle, as I'll call it, we talk basketball with each other, I'm not sure we've ever disagreed on a team or a game as much as like we just disagree on this one.
I'm trying to think of one.
Like, I think last year you got a little higher on Illinois than me, but like you respected the fact that they had Cade in their region and like.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I thought the Loyola matchup was bad. Who's the kid on Georgia Tech who ended up not being,
right?
Yeah, like the Cade thing, I think rightfully should have terrified a lot of Illinois fans.
Yeah, I don't
like.
Really
I still don't know who would have guarded Cade Cunningham. I mean, it would have been Io, but like, I don't know how great I felt about that at the time.
Well, Chicago Bulls Io was locking him up, but I don't know.
That's true. That's true. He's a great.
I don't know if Illinois Io is.
No, is he really so if we get Chicago Bulls IO on last year's Illinois and Detroit Pistons Cade though. Cade is winning the matchups.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know if
we've very pro Cade.
I don't know if we've disagreed as much on a game. Illinois is going to Purdue on Tuesday night. Battle of the 2 hottest teams in the Big Ten. Purdue's won 5 straight. Illinois has won 4 straight. Are you looking at the Big Ten standings right now or no?
I can pull them up real quick.
No, don't. The Illinois and Purdue are 2 of the 3 teams that have won multiple games in a row in the Big Ten. Just 3 teams have a 2-game or longer win streak.
Okay.
Do you have any guess who the 3rd team is?
Well, let me go through here. It's not Indiana, obviously.
No.
It's not Wisconsin. It's not Michigan State. Who did Ohio State play before today? I don't think it's Ohio State.
It's not Ohio State.
Rutgers, it's not, because they recently lost on the road. They recently lost to Maryland. It's definitely not Nebraska, because I think they're 0-10.
Yes,
they're 0-12 now in the league. Do they go 0-20?
No, I think they get one at some point, but who knows?
Okay. Minnesota is terrible.
They lost at Iowa.
Okay, yeah. It's not Michigan because they lost to
Purdue.
All right, so I have no, because Maryland lost today. So I have Penn State, and I think Northwestern left. I guess Northwestern.
Yes, Northwestern.
Is it really Northwestern?
The third longest winning streak in the Big Ten. They beat Rutgers at home by 1, and they won at Nebraska. The 3rd hottest team in the Big Ten.
This feeds into your maybe the take you hate more than anything about the Big Ten is that it's super deep, because teams at the bottom can beat the teams in the middle, and in no other conference do they do it like they do in the Big Ten.
But yeah, so it's the 2 hottest teams in the Big Ten, not coached by Chris Collins. Yeah, it's essentially a battle for first place. If Illinois wins, they are now tied in the tiebreaker with Purdue and are up 2 games on them. And I think with Illinois with a 2-game lead on Purdue with only 7 games left, well, it would be hard for Purdue to come. Purdue still got to Wisconsin. This could put the dagger in Purdue, I think, in the Big Ten standings. They would be up a game on Wisconsin with the tiebreaker for the outright thing. Michigan State is 8-3. They don't play till later this week.
I think their fault. I think Michigan State's falling off.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that they got pounded at the
My point is that Illinois controls their own destiny. And now they have a chance, like, I think, put it away and be the clear runaway winner. So, I mean, we talk about biggest game of the year. Like, we've said that multiple times.
I think this actually is.
This actually is. Until like some game later in the year, maybe Michigan State has like
the Big Ten tournament championship against Purdue.
Yeah, this isn't going to be the biggest one for forever, but like,
no, yeah.
Up to this point in the season, this is the biggest game of the year. The first matchup, Purdue won in double overtime in Champaign.
96-88.
Weird game with Kofi Cover getting in foul trouble. Purdue getting an early lead. Illinois crawling back. The big Corbello game. Some key shots by Plummer and Frazier late. So what are you looking for in the rematch?
I think there's a lot of things to keep an eye on, but I'm going to highlight one, and I want to talk about it a little bit first with you. Sasha Stefanovic, off the top of your head, do you remember how many points he had against Illinois earlier this season? Because I just looked the box score, so I'm kind of cheating. Okay, that's fine. I actually wanted you to tell me because I forgot.
22.
22. Okay. Yeah, so I think that Illinois slowing down Sasha Stefanovic is probably the biggest key for them on the defensive side, because these are two teams who I think should want to play faster than they do. And I think at times they try to play faster than they currently are tempo-wise, because they're both in the 200s in that area. And I think both teams are better when they play faster because they both have really good players in transition. Obviously, Purdue with Jaden Ivey. But when Purdue's in the half court, they run so much through Sasha Stefanovic. And I think that Illinois scouted that really, really well before the game in Champaign. And they made it their goal to take him away. And if there's one guy who Trent Frazier didn't really slow down this season, it was Sasha Stefanovic, who I'm looking at it now, 5 of 8 from 3, like you said, ended up with 22 points. And a couple of those were like loose ball threes or things that, he got when Trent wasn't guarding him. But Illinois is going to need to defend him better. And that's going to be difficult to do because it's in Mackey, home rim, home crowd, et cetera, et cetera. But if you defend him better, are you sacrificing the way you defended against Jaden Ivey? Because I think he was 3 of 10 from the field. And I think he ended up really well from the free throw line, right? Because he got fouled a bunch and went to the line a ton. So is that a give and take relationship? Do we see them defend Stefanovic better, but then lack off of Ivy? I don't know. I think that's something that's really, really important. And that could be a huge, huge determinant in who ends up winning the game.
Yeah, I actually thought Illinois did a good job on him in the half court. And a lot of his buckets were just like shots that are just like ridiculously tough. I think Corbello lost him one time. Or just like shots in transition were like.
I think Corbello lost him twice for threes. Now that you say that.
Or just like in transition, like you just lose him for a second. And he hit a big shot. I'm curious to see, like, does Jaden Ivey respond? Like, does Jaden Ivey play better? I think DeMonte Williams will guard him again.
And Ivey's been really good since I came in Champaign. He's averaging like 20 points and is it 4 rebounds a game? He's been really, really good. He's been closer to like the Jaden Ivey that we expected to see before the season started. Yeah,
he's been 21 points or more in every game except for Iowa, where he only played 22 minutes because it was his first game back from injury, and he was still 5 for 7 in that game. Like, Ivey's been way better. I think he's a better player at home. I think Purdue offensively is just better at home because I think more guys like Eric Hunter or Isaiah Thompson or even Mason Gillis, who's shooting the crap out of the ball in low volume, like those guys just kind of seem to step up at home. So can Illinois just get enough stops and weather the Purdue storm? Because so many times this year I've watched just like Purdue get a stop, transition, 3-pointer. Purdue get a stop, Jaden Ivey, transition dunk.
See, this is where
someone get a bucket on them. Purdue come down half court set, Zach inside.
So this is where so I just figured out where we inherently disagree with Purdue. You see them get big bucket after big bucket when they need it.
I'm saying like in runs, like can we weather their runs?
No, okay, cool. I see from them is go up 10, go up 12, go up 15. Let's give it back to a 3, 4, 5 point game. That's what I see with Purdue. And that's why I question how good Purdue is, because that is not what a team that wins the Big Ten normally does. And this is a Purdue team that I think in KenPom, and let me pull it up real quick, they are 104th in defensive efficiency. That is worse than what Iowa was last year. And that makes no sense because they have an elite guard defense. They have an elite athlete playing guard defensively in Ivy. And for whatever reason, he's just not great defensively. Like, he should be really, really good. He moves great laterally. He's great vertically. He's quick. He's long. He's a freak athlete. Like I said, he should be one of the best defenders, not only in the Big Ten, but probably in America. And you can disagree. You understand that stuff more than I do, but I see no reason why he is as bad as he has been defensively for them.
Yeah, no, I mean, he could definitely do better. I think as a team, I'm not going to dispute
that is what concerns me when I watch Purdue and I try and project where they can go in the end. And when I see them in a big game, and I think the Illinois game is a really good example. The previous Illinois game, the one in Champaign, is a really good example of my concerns with Purdue. Is they were up 7 to 12 points multiple times in the second half, and they should have put that game away multiple times in the second half, especially with how bad Kofi Coburn was in that game. And they just didn't do it. And give Illinois credit because they're tough as nails. They fought back. They got big buckets when they needed them. But this is like a reoccurring thing with Purdue. And how many days ago was it that Purdue played against Ohio State? That was a week ago today, as we're recording this. They're a Jaden Ivey desperation 3 on a play that he screws up coming out of a timeout by Matt Painter from going to overtime with Ohio State when they were up like 10 with 7 minutes left. Why is that game close?
Yeah, look,
that's what scares me about Purdue when I'm filling out a bracket with them in March, and I know I keep going ahead to this, and that's kind of a tease for my thing with buzzer beater at the end, is I struggle to trust them, which is so weird because I should trust the hell out of them. They have Jaden Ivey, who is one of my biggest guys. I love Travion Williams. Mason Gillis is one of the best glue guys in America. He's the perfect 4 for them with everything else they have on their court. And Zach Edey is probably the biggest matchup nightmare for anyone in the country, except Chet Holmgren, because he probably is the biggest. But there's just something about them that I watch and I'm like, why are you allowing teams to get back into games? And I don't know what it is. And especially for Matt Painter, a guy who's prided himself on defense for the longest time. And this team just isn't good defensively. They're just terrible.
Look, I understand it. At least they get up and they get leads. Like, I don't know. Their offense is just.
And that's a really good way to look at it. And let's be honest, that's the greatest counter to what I just said because
they get leads. Like
they're 20 and 3. They're 20 and 3, and they
won at Illinois.
I was gonna say they'd be 23-0 if it wasn't for a half-court heat from Ron Harper, Johnny Davis going berserk, and Rob Finney having an out-of-body experience.
Which does stem to their defense a bit, but like, yeah, look, them slipping off the gas is a huge concern of mine. But like, at least they have the lead. Like my point is that there's going to be a point on Tuesday night where Purdue is going to make a run and just get like bucket after bucket and look unstoppable. And so it's Illinois has to weather that and respond to it. I'm not saying they can't because teams have been able to respond to it. But again, Purdue is just good for these runs every game where it's like Ivy dunk, Stefanovic 3, Edey post up where you're like, how do you stop that? And it's just like it piles on. It for like a minute, you just feel like you had your soul snatched from you. So I want to see how Illinois responds to that. And the guy who usually helps them respond in those scenarios is Kofi Coburn. And he did not do great against Zach Edey the first time. And like, I don't think he can be as bad. He might've been dealing with some concussion symptoms or whatever, but I am concerned. Like, why is it going to be different? Why is it going to be different? Because Edey is just as big. And from watching,
should we just say where we differentiate instead of delaying this? Because I feel like we're just delaying it. I think Illinois is going to win, and you think Purdue's going to win.
Yeah,
let's just quit delaying it, and that's really where we inherently disagree on this. We've been going back and forth on this since we last recorded a podcast, and that was the last time we saw each other in person.
Are you expecting how much more are you expecting from Kofi? Because Zach Edey is just as big. And like, for people who say that there were bad foul calls in the Illinois game, like that's fair. But every Purdue game I watched, like Trace is picking up 2 against him right away. Dickinson's getting in foul trouble against him. Like, he puts everyone in foul trouble. You cannot guard that guy without fouling.
I think that, so let me predicate it with this. I think Illinois wins the game because I think the matchup between Edey and Kofi is close to a net equal as it's possibly going to be. I'll give Edey a slight edge because he's 7'4" and he's a matchup nightmare and he's at home. But I know that Kofi's going to win the matchup with Travion Williams. He's done it 3-4 times in his career now, and he's going to do it again.
But they will throw Edey out for as long. Like, they like to play Edey. Like,
you're right. You're right. They will. And I think that if that matchup between Kofi and Edey is a net equal, that Illinois is close to a net equal. And I'm giving Edey just a slight edge that I think Illinois wins the game because I think Illinois has better guards.
But I think,
and that includes Jaden Ivey. Like, I don't think Eric Hunter Jr. is very good. I don't think Isaiah Thompson is very good.
But those guys have been a little bit better lately, and those guys are better at home. And Illinois got 60 points from Curbelo and Trent and Plummer, like, at home. And granted, it was like a double overtime game, but they got 60 points from those guys.
Listen, I got a hard time thinking that Trent's going to go 2 of 9 from 3 and only finish with 16 points if they play a double overtime game against Purdue again. And give Plummer credit because he got really hot in that game against Purdue. And I don't think that you're going to get anywhere near what you got from Curbelo again. But even look at a guy like Jacob Grandison. He played only 29 minutes against Purdue in a game that went 50. Like, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but is Jacob Grandison not essentially the exact same thing, just less physical than Mason Gillis and Caleb First?
I would argue he's better offensively and worse. Like, he's better offensively.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So essentially, and you can throw, if you want, fine. You want to throw Brandon Newman in that conversation? Fine. You want to throw Ethan Morton in that conversation? Fine. And this speaks to the depth that Purdue has. And one of the reasons why their ceiling can be as high as one of 3, 4, 5 other teams in the entire country when everything's clicking for them. My thing is, it's now February 6th and we're recording this, and their defensive efficiency is worse than Iowa's was last season. And that makes no sense.
But they've won 5 straight games, including at Illinois.
Yeah. And you know what? Iowa finished 2nd or 3rd in the Big Ten last year. And they went on 5-6 game win streaks in the Big Ten last year too.
But I just think they've won 5 straight. They won at Illinois. So that's 6 of 7. I think they're figuring it out, and they're playing a little.
You think they're figuring it out because in the last time Illinois, because the last time Illinois and Purdue played, Purdue's defensive efficiency was in the 60s. It's now in the hundreds. So it's actually the exact opposite. It's actually getting worse.
So they've won
in a league that is terribly, in a league that's awful offensively.
They've won 7 of 8. They won at Illinois.
Their offense is great. It's the best in the country.
So then if the offense is the best in the country, like, I'm willing to overlook the defense, at least in a game against a team that they.
Okay. All right. Let's look at it this way. You bagged on Illinois early in the first half of their Big Ten schedule because they beat no one, right? Or you weren't completely buying them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at who they've beaten in their 5-game win streak. Northwestern. You think they're good?
No.
And don't you dare say, well, they've won 2 in a row.
I was thinking about it.
They're not good. You think Iowa's good? Because I don't.
It's a road win. Like, that was Illinois' best win for a while. They won by double digits on the road.
Illinois didn't have a good win for a while. They've now got 3 quad wins in the last week.
They smoked Northwestern. Like, they killed Northwestern. I know they did what they were supposed to.
Dude, it was at Mackey. They should smoke Northwestern.
So I can't punish them for doing what they're supposed to do.
Okay, fine. Don't punish them, but don't hold against Illinois the fact that they're doing the same thing against bad teams at the top of in the first half of their Big Ten schedule.
I'm not. I've been impressed with Illinois lately. I've been impressed with Illinois.
But let's go back to January. Let's go back to December when they blew out Iowa and they blew out Rutgers, and then they pounded
The Iowa game was.
Fine. They won by 4, but they allowed Iowa to come back in. They were up by double digits most of the second half. They pulled a Purdue in the last 5-7 minutes because Keegan Murray got super hot. My point is that Illinois won by like 30 against Rutgers. They won by 10 plus against Minnesota, Maryland. They beat Nebraska by 10. And this is around the time that we get Ant Wright on and we have this conversation. He's like, yeah, well, they haven't really looked good, but let me ask you this. Have any of those games been single digits? And both of us were like, well, no, you got a good point. This is my thing with Purdue, and I'm not taking anything away from the fact that they beat Northwestern by 20. They went on the road and beat Iowa by 10. And they got a 3-point win against a good Ohio State team at home. And they beat Minnesota at the barn by 15. And they beat Michigan at Mackey by 6.
That wasn't great.
Right, but that took a great experience. That took a great game from Hunter Dickinson. But that's my thing. Is that what I'm seeing out of Purdue and their 5-game win streak is a lot of what I saw at Illinois in their first 5-6 games of the Big Ten against the bottom half teams. They did the same thing. And sure, maybe Illinois goes to Mackey and loses, but don't say they're getting better and figuring things out when they're playing teams who suck and their defensive efficiency is going down.
They've won 7 of 8 though. Like that to me tells me they're just figuring out.
They're figuring it out against teams that are bad.
And I think Purdue couldn't figure out how to win games early on. Like
what do you mean? They're 20-3.
What I'm saying, like when they lost to Rutgers, they couldn't figure out how to win a close, tight game. Indiana, they couldn't really figure out how to win that close, tight game. Wisconsin was early. Like they're now at least they're just figuring out how to win games. And look, I'm concerned about Purdue long term. I do not think they're going to win the title. I'm not saying that, and that's
well. You did say they were going to when you went there for the first time this season. I think that was the exact text I got from you as you walked out of Mackey Arena.
Look, yeah,
I think you said the drought is over, or something along those lines, which I know was hard for you to say.
And look, I don't think that anymore. That's where I think the defense will hurt them in March. But on Tuesday night, they're playing a team they beat by 8 already on the road, and they just match up better. They can take away Illinois' best option. They shoot better at home. I don't like the matchups. Does not make sense for me to pick Illinois to win, especially when they already lost at home. That's like what it comes down to. And I just think they're better and more talented.
That's probably a smart pick.
And that's not a slander against Illinois. I think they're the clear second best team in the league, are playing better, are doing a lot of right things. I'm not trying to slander Illinois here. And I am concerned about Purdue's defense long term, but Tuesday night they match up better. And that's why I'm picking them, because it's home and they match up better.
Listen, that's the smart pick. I'm going out on a thin tree branch, picking Illinois, and I normally don't do that for anything. I like to think I'm not a hot take artist. Although you thought my Duke being the most talented team since whatever.
That was a hot take thing, but okay.
Yeah. I don't think Illinois is going to get rattled by Mackey on Tuesday night. They're 22, 23, 24-year-olds. They're not going to get rattled by how loud it is. They're not. They've been there. They've done that. They've dealt with it. They don't care. They just don't seem to get rattled by things. Purdue's going to go on a run. I don't think they care because I think they're going to respond. I think that Kofi plays a lot better because he can't play worse. And listen, I'll come on here Wednesday morning or Tuesday. Maybe we'll finally do the record an episode while we drive podcast, because that might be fun.
If I go to this game,
that's true. You still got to get your credential approved. And I'll eat my words. If Illinois loses this game, I'll gladly do it. I think admitting that you were wrong is great podcast content.
It's great. Being wrong is great in life because you learn from it.
Yeah, right. But I think that Kofi's going to play well enough. I think Illinois is going to hit enough shots. I think Purdue is going to defend poorly because history says they're going to defend poorly because that's what this Purdue team does. And I think Illinois is going to get the win.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds fair in theory. I could see Kofi getting a foul at like 18 minutes, them sitting him for a while, him coming back and getting another foul. Just, I could just 80 fouls everyone out. And I think Trevian will play a little better. I think the role guys shoot better at home. And I think Purdue will win. Like they won by 8 in Champaign with free throws extending it. I think they win like 85-77. Win by 8 again.
Before we get to Pac-12 update, tell me what your opinion is of this, as not a big Illinois football guy.
Is this Lovie Smith?
What the hell are the Houston Texans doing?
Well,
saying that they're interested. They're now this is from Adam Schefter and Phil Yates. This is the exact tweet. Texans are now in talk with associate head coach and defensive coordinator Lovie Smith about becoming their head coach. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't like.
You shouldn't have fired David Culley. He won 3 games this year when you were supposed to go 0-17.
If Lovie Smith is actually the coach, does Deshaun Watson ever play for them again?
I don't think Deshaun Watson plays for them ever again.
That's fair.
Okay, let's get to Pac-12 updates.
Well, so what's your sport? I have 85-77 for Tuesday night. Purdue wins. What do you got?
Sorry, I just got another tweet notification about the Texans head coaching position. I'll go Illinois 83, Purdue 79. Can I say something real quick? And I think you're gonna make fun of me for it. When I'm asked to give score predictions, I'm so bad with numbers and counting.
I am too. I just
no, I'm thinking in my head 83. So I'm picking Illinois 83, 79. I'm like, before I say 79, I'm thinking like, make sure you say a number that's lower than 83. Then I say 79 and I'm like, wait, is that lower? Which it is, thankfully lower. But that's how bad I am at math, people.
We are not math majors. Anyway, Pac-12 update.
Yes, it's a doozy. We stayed up till like 12:30 watching the game last night.
Big week in the Pac-12. They had 2 like nationally broadcasted games. Thursday night, we had a really fun UCLA Arizona game, the second battle in this. And God, I mean, not like a great game. I think both teams missed shots. Neither team really got in a rhythm. Like UCLA did not deserve to be in that game, and yet kind of crawled their way back. Kirk Creesa again wasn't great, but God, is that guy has so much swag. He had some he was like 1 for his last 15 against UCLA, and he hits a 3 and he's kissing the crowd. Like, you gotta love that guy. But Arizona snuck out of there with the win. Then they played. But I was impressed with how UCLA, like on a really bad game, kind of hung in with Arizona. So I actually walked away from that game thinking UCLA's best team in the league. Then we go to Saturday, and USC, who people have kind of discounted, like they kind of showed what USC is and who they are. It's just a really big team that you don't want to play offense against because they make things tough. And they hung around with Arizona. Like they were in that game. Arizona pulls it out though. And then Saturday night, we have just an unbelievable, I think it was a 9:00 start. UCLA goes to Arizona State, who was second to last in the conference. They have 6 wins all year. You're thinking UCLA is going to smoke them. And in the mid-Cronin era, Arizona State has given UCLA so much trouble. And it was just a bizarre game. Bill Walton on the call went to triple overtime, just some horrific shooting, some terrible decision-making. Every time a team got a lead, they were going to give it right back. You watched the game. You have any thoughts on that game, Pac-12 standings? Johnny Juzang, do you want to give your Johnny Juzang speech? Like you sat through that game with me. It like someone, Bill Walton on air said it was free basketball, and I stole this from a tweet, but that wasn't free basketball. That was a basketball toll. Like that was not good for the sport.
I normally try my best to not tweet about other games when watching other games because I don't cover those teams and I don't want to flood other people's timelines with information that they probably don't care to hear from me. But do you remember when, well, not you and I, do you remember when people said Johnny Juzang was deserving of being a consensus first team All-American before the season? And you and I just laughed at that take because he essentially is just a good player. He's not a great player. He never
It was complete hindsight bias of like, let's ignore the 20.
They watched him play 6 games in the Pac-12 tournament and in the Final Four, and they were like, wow.
Like, ignore 20 games of evidence.
Yeah.
So
yeah, my only takeaway from that is Mick Cronin better not draw up another play for Johnny Juzang to get a shot in winning time ever again, because I think he missed like 8 layups in the 2.5 overtime periods he played against an absolute crap Arizona State team.
Yeah, he was like 0 for 8 in all the overtimes, and like they had chances to win the game, and like Jaime Jaquez isn't maybe as like good of a one-on-one scorer. Tyler Campbell was struggling, but I'm like, every time they had a chance to win, they were going at Juzang. I'm like, dude, like this is not working. Please go to somebody else. And Arizona State did everything they could to give the game away. And they were up 6 with like 30 seconds left. UCLA took 15 seconds to get a shot off. They literally like, you're down 6 and you need to shoot right away. They took a layup. They were down 4, and then they like Arizona State just threw the ball away, and like UCLA somehow had a shot to win. It's crazy game. Yeah, it was wild. Is Arizona back to the best team in the Pac-12?
Yes, they are to me. To me, they are. I realize that like USC, they struggled with them yesterday at Arizona, and USC is, no disrespect, Sim, I know you like USC and fight on Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams. I'm all in on that train for next year on the football side. They're like a 7 seed, like a 7 or 8 seed. Like they just aren't very good. Like they're good. Like they're good enough to be an NCAA tournament team. They're not very good. Like it's rare in my opinion to see a team get into the NCAA tournament because they stack a lot of wins. And USC's resume is going to be good enough to where they're going to get in, but they also stacked a ton of wins. And they're going to be a team that I might look at in a bracket and be like, they're in because they stacked a ton of wins. And I don't know who they're like, if they're like a 7-10, that'd be a prime 7-10 to pick to see the 10 win.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, I think we talked about this over text, but I think Arizona is like less upset proof. Like we talked about, like I trust them like to like get out. Like usually, like could totally lose in the first weekend. They just do not show up for games that don't matter. Like
but they won't lose to a 16 seed. Like I don't think they're going to lose to like they won't lose in the first round.
No, I think like I will say that Arizona State loss is terrible for the resume, and they cannot get a 1 seed now. I just don't, even if they run the table, I don't see it. Like that's a terrible loss, and they don't have that many chances for good wins. Yeah. They've played Arizona twice now. Like
it's tough for me to see the Pac-12 getting a 1 seed unless Arizona runs the table.
Like UCLA is probably in position for a 3 seed. I'd say. I think they're ended up at like a 2 or 3. You play a 7 or 6 in the second round. Like I can totally see UCLA losing.
Yeah,
they just don't show up for these games. But if we get to the second weekend, it's something about them just like in big games. Like we'll see. I think I trust UCLA more like super long term, but like Arizona just feels much safer and a better team.
Yeah, no, I agree. So my Pac-12 power rankings are Arizona 1, UCLA 2, fight on 3, USC. We go Oregon 4.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat right now. With de facto Pac-12 team Gonzaga being number 1.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Seth Davis just released his top 25 on Twitter, so you should go read through those replies because they're good as always. Also, Illinois, Purdue, top 7 matchup, according to Seth Davis.
Yeah. All right.
Buzz reader, baby. Let's get into it. My new favorite part of the show. I don't think this is like a crazy thing to say, and I hope that you kind of understand where it's coming from. And I feel like people say this every single year about the NCAA tournament, that it's going to be crazy. But I think that this NCAA tournament might be a situation where we see more upsets in the first weekend of the tournament than we normally see, but mostly just because of the fact that there's so many players that are in college basketball with an extra year of eligibility. And there's a lot of teams that are really good. Like there's a lot of mid-major teams that I think are very, very good. We got like a Loyola Chicago. They're good. BYU, I know they got pounded last night by Gonzaga and they might not get in the tournament, but like that's a team that like I don't think a lot of people would want to see in their bracket. San Francisco, another team from the West Coast Conference. I don't think a lot of people would want to see in their bracket. Wyoming, Boise State, 2 teams from the Mountain West that are both pretty good teams, right? I think St. Mary's is another team in the West Coast Conference that you probably really don't want to see. I know there's a couple teams in the Big East, and I know that's like a Power 6, and I would consider them to be one of the better conferences in college basketball this year. But like, Xavier, like I don't think a lot of people want to see a Xavier. They're top 30 right now in KenPom. Murray State is 22-2, and anytime you have 22 wins on February 6th, I think that's pretty impressive. Even if you're playing in the Ohio Valley, like I look at this and I kind of think we might be in a position where we see a lot of upsets in the first round. And normally I think upsets are fun and you want to see those, but also they're not as fun when you get to the Sweet 16 after that week off between the tournament, right? And then you have a 1 seed or a 5 seed, or you have, a 13 seed playing.
113.
Yeah, like that's not fun. No one really enjoys seeing that. But maybe the 13 seed this year is actually pretty good. And maybe they give a 1 seed a run, or they are able to hang around in the Sweet 16. I'm not saying this is going to happen for sure, but I think that we might be primed for a really, really, really entertaining NCAA tournament, because I think there's a lot of really good teams, and a lot of teams are really experienced this year.
Yeah, and I'll throw 2 more teams out. Like, Iowa's going to be like a 7 to 10 seed, and like I don't think they're great, but like you could be a 2 seed, and like all of a sudden the best player is on the other team. Like you don't want to see Keegan. Like, what if Keegan Murray just erupts because he's that good? Like, you don't want to see Keegan Murray, or even Indiana, like Jackson Davis. Like, you don't want to, like, you could be a higher seed, but they could have the best player in the court, and that's always scary. Yeah, I think that's
and like, this is a team. And by the way, remember when you said North Carolina Duke was going to be close on the last podcast? You're welcome.
Yeah, I bet on Duke, so I mean,
I assume that you bet on Duke. You hedged yourself. Like, North Carolina, first of all, they don't guard. They're bad defense.
No, that's not a team. I'm off. That's not a team.
They're bad. They're bad, right? But like, and I don't know if they're locked to get into the tournament. And they're the type of team that would get in the tournament strictly just because of the fact that they're North Carolina and the committee likes storylines, right? And that's the type of team that gets in. But like, they're talented. Like, I don't think Caleb Love is anywhere near as good as he should be or was expected to be. And I think a new home would probably be good for Caleb Love. But Caleb Love and Armando Bacot are 2 talented players. Like, you want to see them in your bracket? I don't really think so. Like, talent-wise, Sweet 16 is where they should probably be. But they're not, and they're not very well coached. So,
yeah. All right. So my buzzer beater take, the National Player of the Year race has been like, this has been a really weird year for the race, where like nobody, like, we've seen so many guys spun out for the award. Jaden Ivey in the preseason, obviously Juzang in the preseason. Kofi's kind of been lingering all year. Johnny Davis made his mark. Benedict Mathurin had a stretch for a second. I think Ochai Abaji's still lingering. I guess there was Keegan Murray talk, like we have Paolo Banchero, you could throw him in there.
Oscar Tshiebwe.
Oscar Tshiebwe's been in the mix.
He's been thrown in there a lot lately.
Like, there's just been so many names in the mix, and like usually at this point in the year, there is like a front runner or a runaway candidate, and we haven't had that guy yet. And like, I was torn on who to pick. Like, I was Johnny Davis for a while, and then like Kofi fell off, and Kofi's been playing a lot better. I think Kofi is definitely the big time player of the year right now, but like somehow this guy to me has fallen under the radar. And like, I don't think he's the obvious player of the year, but like, it's crazy it's not being discussed more. Chad Holmgren, the freshman from Gonzaga, has been incredible lately. Just on an absolute tear. He went for 20 points, 17 rebounds, 6 assists, and 5 blocks against BYU, who they smoked. And like, BYU is a tournament team. He had 23, 12, and 4 blocks against San Diego. 21, 9, and 3 against Loyola Marymount. Like, I get these teams aren't great, but he's been showing up against the tournament teams. When you look at 2A impact, there's no one that does it like him right now. Like, he's not scoring as many points as a Kofi Coburn or Ochai Agbaji, but he's shooting a ridiculous 64% from the field, 46% from 3, 73% from the line. He's a Naismith candidate for Defensive Player of the Year, deservedly so. He leads the country in box plus minus, which I love. And his team is top 2 and is going to be top 2. And to me, is the best team in the country. I just don't think there's a more impactful player in the sport right now. And I don't think he's like a runaway candidate, but I'm surprised he's not being talked about, considering he's the best player on the best team. And he would have my vote today for National Player of the Year.
Yeah, no, I think what's really interesting about Chet is that I feel like everyone every single year forgets about Gonzaga around this time, January, February, when everyone else goes into their conference play, as Gonzaga does as well. I think that Gonzaga ends up being top 25, number 1 in the polls in the next week. In fact, I would probably vote them to be number 1 this week, after I would have voted for Auburn in the past couple of weeks. Auburn struggling the way they did against Georgia is concerning to me, and give their opponents credit, right? Like, Auburn is now the team that everyone wants to be in the SEC, and they're getting everyone's best shot every single night. But it's hard for me to look over the fact that Gonzaga went on the road and beat BYU by 30 points. And this is a BYU team that we are kind of saying is an NCAA tournament kind of roster, kind of team.
They're in, like, as of right now, they're in the field, even after that.
Yeah, and they're going on the road and winning by 30. I think that Gonzaga, and I picked them before the season started to win the national title. I don't know how you guard them. And I don't know how you score against Chet Holmgren unless you have someone who can just bully him in the paint. They are so difficult to match up with. And I agree with you. I think they're the best team in America. And I say that in a year where I don't think that there's a team that's elite at the top of college basketball that I feel like is going to be a consensus pick to win the national title. Like last year, everyone was picking Gonzaga and picking Baylor before March Madness started, right? And you look at it, and this year that doesn't exist. I think we can.
There's gonna be diversity this year.
Like, let's go through it right now. Like February 6th, like Gonzaga to me is good enough to win a national title.
People are gonna pick Gonzaga. People are gonna pick Auburn. People are always gonna pick Duke. I think it's fair. I think people are gonna pick Arizona. I think people.
I was gonna say I think people would pick Arizona. I think Kentucky is good enough to win a national title.
People are gonna pick Purdue.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, I personally wouldn't pick Kansas. I said this on the last episode, but then now David McCormick is figuring it out at this time of the year again, like he did last year. Like maybe he is because he was really good against Baylor. Like I was really high on Baylor in December. I'm not very high on Baylor right now. They're struggling. They're 19-4 now. Is Kansas good enough to win it? I don't know, but people are definitely going to pick them because of Kansas.
Yeah,
people are going to pick Duke. I would not pick Villanova. They're 17-6 and they lost twice to Marquette, a Marquette team that's.
I think that's it. I don't think anyone's gonna pick UCLA. Like I think.
No, I think there's gonna be people who pick UCLA preseason top 3 team in America. They're gonna be a 1 or a 2 seed. What I'm saying, and this kind of goes back to my take for buzzer beater, is that I think this year's NCAA tournament is going to be really matchup based, and it always is, right? But like, and let's use the team that we talk about the most here, Illinois. There's a path, and I've said since the summer that I didn't think Illinois was good enough to get to the Final Four. Maybe they are if they get the right matchups. And there's not a team in their region who, and you can say this every year, but there's not a team in their region who has a big that matches up really well with Kofi. Or let's say that team gets upset in the round of 32 by a team that's an 11 seed or a 12 seed. And I don't know who those matchups are for Kofi, right? At the mid-major level. I don't know if there's a Cam Krutwig out there for another team this year. But my point is, and I think this kind of connects to player of the year as well, is that college basketball in general is just wide open. And I think that's what is making the season really entertaining.
Yeah, I agree. Like last year in your bracket pool, everyone picked Gonzaga or Baylor to win it all. And I think there were some people who picked Illinois to be different and they liked Illinois. And
really hot team going into March. Yeah.
Like that was it. Nobody was picking anybody else last year besides those 3 teams. And I think this year we'll see diversity in your bracket pools is what people pick.
Yeah.
But yeah, my take is like, and we'll see how he finishes out the year. I don't want to hear that Chet doesn't play anybody because like he had 15, 6 and 4 blocks against UCLA.
Well, let's leave it at this. There are more good win opportunities in the West Coast Conference than there are in the ACC and there are in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I don't want to hear that he doesn't play anybody. Like he is just slaughtering teams that are going to make the tournament. So
yeah. The West Coast Conference is probably better than the ACC and it's probably better than the Pac-12. And maybe not the ACC. The ACC sucks, but
it's deep with like teams that would be middle WCC.
Yeah. It's better than the Pac-12 is though. I do feel confident saying that. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to this episode of Inside the Arc. We appreciate you listening. If you're able to, please like, rate, subscribe, leave a comment, whatever. We appreciate when you guys do that. That way we know how we can get better and better pertain to you guys that are routinely listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening, everyone. We will be back later this week to recap what is likely the biggest regular season game that Illinois will play in the 2021-2022 regular season.